With us today, we have Russ Francis, who is a senior consultant at Zephyr Environmental. Russ conducts the Dialogue's annual air quality analysis, and today he's going to run through some of the fundamentals of air quality, as well as taking us through the results of the 2024 air quality report that the Dialogue has recently published. I'd also like to introduce my colleagues and members of the Dialogue Secretariat, Lisa Player and Kate Sims, who are managing the questions and technology for today's session. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things before we get started. This session is being recorded, and we have set cameras to off and microphones to mute to prevent any interruptions or interference. So if you could just keep it on mute through the duration of the call, that would be great. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to pop them in the chat function, and we'll have some time at the end to answer those. If we don't get to all the questions, we will get back to you with answers following the session. The recording from today's webinar will be uploaded on the Dialogue's website, and the presentation slides will also be circulated to all the attendees. We've got quite a few new people joining us today that might not have engaged with the Dialogue before, so I wanted to just give a very quick overview of what the Dialogue is and how it's structured. The Dialogue was established back in 2011 in response to community concern about the growth and impacts of the mining industry in the Upper Hunter. There's always been community consultative committees at individual mine sites where people can raise their concerns about those particular sites, but there was no forum that existed for people to raise concerns about the cumulative impact of mining in the Upper Hunter. So the industry identified an opportunity to establish a forum for the community members to raise these broader concerns and to work collaboratively to understand and address those issues that they had. And so the Dialogue was established for this reason. Substantial progress has been achieved in the last 10 years or so across a range of areas, including environmental, social, health, and economic issues. The Dialogue has fostered meaningful discussions and meaningful and respectful discussions on these issues and has undertaken a range of projects to address them. I'm not going to go through the projects, but there's just a quick overview on the structure. The Dialogue's overseen by the Joint Advisory Steering Committee, as you can see there, which consists of industry, community, business, and local government representatives. This committee provides direction to the Dialogue and is essential in making sure that the Dialogue's work aligns with the contemporary issues facing the Hunter and is addressing the concerns raised by the community. Reporting into the Joint Advisory Steering Committee are working groups which each address a specific theme that has been raised by the community. And these working groups are open to all relevant stakeholders to join and participate in. And we have a number of our working group and steering committee members on the call today. And thank you for joining us. A new area this year for the Dialogue is ensuring that the voices and views of the youth from the region are heard. And we've recently established a youth advisory group to ensure that we are capturing the youth perspective in important conversations about the future of the Hunter. Finally, before I hand over to Russ, I just wanted to mention the Dialogue's 2025 priorities, which were informed by feedback that we received from the 2024 Community Forum, which we held late last year. And we partnered with the Institute for Regional Futures to assist us with this forum and collating all the feedback from the community that participated in that event, and that report's been published on our website. I won't go through all of our priorities, but I wanted to just call out 5 of the key focus areas for the Dialogue this year. Firstly, we received a lot of feedback about creating opportunities for the community to hear directly from subject matter experts and ask questions directly to them. So to do this, we are running these regular webinars. This is the first one. So please reach out to us if you've got any topics that you'd like to learn about, or if you are interested in presenting. We've also received a lot of support for the continuation of our ongoing reporting on key environmental areas, including air quality, rehabilitation, and water. Post-mining land use was a prominent theme in the community forum, and this has been a key focus of the Dialogue in recent years. And we're looking to showcase both the opportunities and constraints of post-mining land use through a field day event to be hosted at an Upper Hunter mine later this year. We're also going to continue to prioritise engagement on the impacts and benefits of mining locally through our school mine tour program, which has been running now for over 5 years with schools, high schools and primary schools across the Upper Hunter. And as I mentioned earlier, there was keen interest in establishing a youth voice for the dialogue. So we've recently set up our youth advisory group, and I noticed that we've got a couple of members from our youth advisory group on this call, and thank you for joining us. And we had strong interest from local people who are keen to engage on a variety of issues that affect them in the Upper Hunter. So that's just a bit of a recap of our priorities for this year. So let's jump into the webinar, and I'm going to hand over to Russ Francis to take us through his presentation. So thanks very much, Russ. I'll hand over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, James. And yeah, thanks for having me. I did present at the forum a few months ago. So if you did attend that, then you will recognise some of the slides. So yeah, just to introduce myself, my name's Russ. I'm a senior consultant at Zephyr Environmental. Zephyr Environmental are a specialist air quality and greenhouse gas company. So this is solely what we focus on. You will hear an English accent. Please don't hold that against me. Most of my career has been here in Australia, and I do have Australian kids. So let's go with that. So in terms of my work, I conduct air quality monitoring projects, and I think I'm up to about 5 or 6 in the Hunter Valley itself. I also use air quality models to predict concentrations of pollutants at receptor points. So yeah, across all kinds of both aspects of air quality. I've also prepared air quality assessments for operations in the Hunter Valley, so I'm aware of all the dust controls and mitigation measures at various operations. If we just want to flick to that overview. Okay, so essentially the webinar is going to be broken down into 5 sections. So we're going to start with an introduction to air quality, so covering a couple of key topics. We'll have a look at meteorology and dispersion and key sources. I'm then going to go through some monitoring basics, so what pollutants are monitored, what monitoring is there across the Hunter Valley. I'll then just touch on the history, so just pulling back a little bit and recapping when monitoring began and the reasons for that. Similarly, I will go across a historical context for the annual review. So the annual review has been happening for a number of years now, but there's a reason that this started back in 2018 to 2020. So I'll just talk you through that and how that's played a part in how we prepare the annual reviews. And then I'll finish with a recap of what we found from the 2024 review. And this also includes bringing back in the 24-hour exceedance data. Okay, so let's start with the introduction to air quality then. So a couple of kind of key definitions to start with. So air quality is it's a measure of the cleanliness of the surrounding air, whereas air pollution is the buildup of substances in air in insufficient concentrations to cause measurable effects on humans, animals, and vegetation. And the atmosphere is essentially a mix of gases and particles, and these are emitted both anthropogenically, so man-made, human-generated, and also natural sources. So, key thing with air quality is meteorology and dispersion. Meteorological parameters such as wind speed, wind direction play a big part in air pollutant concentrations, and they help with the dispersion. So essentially the quality of the air that we breathe is dependent on the rate at which pollutants are emitted from sources and enter the atmosphere. And then it's the ability of the atmosphere to disperse and move those pollutants. And then essentially the movement and dispersion of air pollutants is, as I said, dependent on wind speed, so wind speed and wind direction. Temperature can play a large part, and turbulence, and by turbulence we mean the mixing of air in the atmosphere and the local topography can play a large part in these elements. So as we mentioned earlier, so there's two types of sources. So we've got the anthropogenic, the man-made ones, and the natural sources. So anthropogenic sources, things like domestic wood heating, industry, mining, agriculture, and transport and vehicle emissions. Your natural sources come from your forest fires, dust storms, and things like sea spray. So I just wanted to touch upon a couple of key definitions as well. Can sometimes the terms emission and concentration can be kind of misused. So just to explain that an emission is the release of the pollutant from a source. So yeah, from a source into the atmosphere. The concentration is the amount of the pollutant in the air, and this is we often use this with the modeling. We're predicting the concentration at a receptor, and then the exposure is the concentration experienced at a receptor over a period of time. So just a couple of key definitions there. So when we're talking about air quality, these five are the typical pollutants of concern. So we have particulate matter, and that is split into multiple size fractions. The largest of these is referred to as TSP, which is total suspended particulates. But from a health perspective, it's the PM10 and the PM2.5. The PM2.5 being the smaller size fraction. Other pollutants are NO2 or nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and ozone. And just going to the next slide, with regards to particulate matter, it's quite important to understand the size of the particles that we're talking about here. So I'm starting on the very right hand side of your screen is a human hair that does looks like a rat's tail. That is to give you a sense of that's a comparison. From there, you have your fine beach sand, and then in between red blood cell and your grain of pollen is the size of a PM10 dust particle. So we're talking very small. PM2.5 is down there between the respiratory droplets and the bacterium. So just a bit of context there around the size of the relative size of particles. And that's essentially going to be the key thing that we talk about across this webinar and in the air quality review is particulate matter. So the sources in the upper hunter. So yeah, focusing this back to what we're talking about today, we've obviously got coal mining, we have the coal-fired power stations, domestic wood heating, agriculture, motor vehicles, non-road diesel equipment, and planned burning and bushfires. And in terms of coal mining, the key source or the key size fraction, I should say, is PM10. Yeah, coal mining is the contributor for PM10. PM2.5 is typically more with regards to motor vehicles. I'll just touch on what I'm referring to as some high concentration scenarios. So this one here is typically the kind of hazy days that you get. So this haze often builds up over prolonged periods of hot and dry conditions, and we get a buildup of pollutants creating that haze, and this is coming from multiple sources, with the mine included, and can often be seen with windy conditions. The other scenario is the cold mornings with stable air. Just waiting for that slide to appear. Yeah, so we typically get cold mornings with stable air, get a build up of wood smoke from domestic heating in the population centres. You can get temperature inversions trapping the pollutants. So you can see that in that image there, the kind of the build up, the haze below the inversion, and the clear sky above it. So typically it can take a few hours in the morning for that inversion to break up, but before then you get a real build up of pollutants below that inversion layer. Okay, so that's essentially the introduction to air quality. We'll now kind of move to monitoring and kind of the basics of air quality monitoring. So with monitoring, the measuring of air quality can help to identify the key causes, the impacts, and that can lead to being able to develop solutions to reduce or regulate it. So the common saying is if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So if we want to be able to manage air pollution, it is necessary to understand the actual concentrations of pollutants in the air. And this is the case across the Hunter Valley with a number of monitoring stations that are strategically located across the valley. So just kind of stepping slightly back, there is a huge network and a huge number of monitoring stations all across New South Wales. So it's split across a number of regions. So there's stations for the Sydney Metropolitan. There's the 14 stations at the Upper Hunter. We've also got the Lower Hunter and the Central Coast with a number of stations across Newcastle. There's also some in the Illawarra. The regional and rural New South Wales are not the same specification as those other locations, but they are still air quality monitors providing concentrations across those regions. So there's a significant number of stations across New South Wales. So what does a station look like? You can see that on the screen there. This is a typical monitoring station, and again, most of them will measure the pollutants that we spoke about earlier. So PM10 and PM2.5 in the image there. You can see the equipment towards the top right of the station. It will monitor NO2, SO2, CO, and ozone. So that's a typical one. It does vary. Some do more. Some do less. Most of these will also have a 10-meter meteorological mast, which again towards the left-hand side of that image there. That's just cropped out the top of the image there. So that monitor will be measuring wind speed. It will be measuring wind direction. It will give you temperature, and it will give you relative humidity. And this can be incredibly useful to determine sources, in particular for wind speed and wind direction. Okay, so let's go through a bit of a history of monitoring in the Upper Hunter. So I've just pulled together a timeline here just to outline this. So back in 2010, the Upper Hunter Air Quality Monitoring Network Advisory Committee was established, and the monitoring network was fully established with 14 stations in 2012. So since then, there've been a couple of 5-year reviews. And in 2023, there was also an annual newsletter was published. So yeah, with data going back to 2012, that's again formed the basis of the annual review with the tables I'll show later. And from what you've seen, if you've read the review, we do actually look at the data, I think going back all the way back to 2013 to give us a real span of air quality over the last 12 to 13 years. So as I've mentioned, there are 14 stations across the Hunter Valley. I understand this to be one of the most intensive air quality monitoring by square meter in the country. You can see on here where they're located if you weren't aware of these before. Yeah, I think we'll later I'll also just talk you through the station groupings and the importance of those. So again, here's another example of what these monitoring stations look like. These two are located at Muswellbrook and Jerry's Plains. Again, on that left-hand image there, you can see the air quality equipment, the PM10 and PM2.5 monitors at the top there, and you can see the full extent of the meteorological mast. So yeah, so there's 14 stations, and these are grouped together into 4 different types. So we typically have background locations. That's you can see that in the very top left. There is a background station at the top left there, and there is another background station towards the bottom right there at Singleton South. The other groupings are large population centres. So there's 2 or 3, I think it's 3 of those. We have the smaller communities and the diagnostic stations. So if we just flick to the next slide, I'll just provide a little bit more context on those. So yeah, so the larger populations, it kind of does what it says on the tin. It's monitoring the air quality that is experienced in those larger population centres. So it gives you a real idea of what concentrations are being measured in those areas. The next type is the smaller communities. Again, does what it says on the tin. It's trying to understand what air quality has been experienced in these smaller communities. Now, with the diagnostic stations, so that's able to diagnose the likely sources of particles in those areas. They are located in specific locations near to mines, and they're essentially not representing air quality at key population centres. And finally, it's the background ones, which we just mentioned in that previous slides. So they're located at the kind of top and bottom of the valley, and they're deliberately there to be removed from the key sources. So we can call them background because they're away from those kind of key emission sources. So those station groupings do play a part in the analysis, which we'll come to shortly. Okay, so many of you will have seen the annual reviews that we've prepared. Just to provide some historical content, we've just got a timeline here, just to kind of pull back again as to the reason why this has come about and why they're kind of written and presented in the way that they are. So it kind of all comes together in 2018. So at this point, the Dialogue hosted their annual forum event. And a common theme of the feedback was for the Dialogue to provide guidance to the Upper Hunter community on how to better understand and interpret air quality data. So the Dialogue's Joint Environment Working Group and Advisory Committee supported the Dialogue to conduct an analysis of publicly available long-term air quality monitoring data to determine whether this had changed over time, and compared it with other regions across New South Wales. What this led to then was an air quality monitoring data analysis project that was conducted by ERM, by members of what are now the team at Zephyr, and we're essentially commissioned to undertake a review of that air quality data, and I'll talk through that in the next slide in a moment. And then since then, December 2021, we did the review for the previous year. In July 2023, we did a review for 2021 and 22. April last year was the 2023, and then I presented at the community forum, and we wrapped up the annual review in the early part of this year. So going back into that 2020 report, so as we kind of mentioned, the Dialogue was seeking an analysis and interpretation of the air quality monitoring network data, and the analysis was designed to answer these 2 questions. So has the air quality in the Upper Hunter changed since monitoring began? And is the air quality in the Upper Hunter measured at the monitoring stations different from those measured at the other locations in New South Wales? So essentially what we did was look at all the data going back to 2013 for PM10 and PM2.5. And we did a comparison, and we've broken it down into different regions of New South Wales and each of the station groupings. And again, you'll see this in the tables later on. And yeah, just to do that full comparison, and then we were able to answer those two questions. And again, so the intent really was to provide accurate information. At this point, the whole review of all the air quality data from 2013 hadn't been done, and the aim was to make sure this was written up in easily understood terms, and it was aiming to provide clarity and certainty to the air quality debate in the Hunter Valley through an assessment and comparison across the regions. So yeah, so that's just a bit of context from where that's come from. And from 2021 onwards, as we've said, we've been doing those annual reviews year on year. And this year we did add back in an analysis of 24-hour exceedance data, and that came out of some community feedback that we received at the forum, and I'll talk through those results next. Okay, so let's have a look at the data. You're going to see a lot of numbers on the screen shortly. I'll do my best to break that down so that it's easy to understand. We've also broken this down into kind of smaller segments. So first up, it's just looking at those annual and period average results. And by period average, I mean the average from when the monitoring began, so 2013 all the way through to 2024. So yeah, so the aims are compare this year's data with the all years average, so all years 2013 to 2024. Compare the Upper Hunter with the rest of New South Wales. So is what's happening in the Upper Hunter being seen across the rest of New South Wales? And then we've also done a bit of a deeper dive into comparing between the station groupings, so the smaller communities, the large population, the diagnostic, and the background locations. Yeah, so as you can see here, table with results going all the way back to 2013. We do have the breakdown of the region and the group on the left-hand side, and this fairly aligns with what I was saying earlier around groupings like the Illawarra and the Lower Hunter and the Central Coast. So a couple of things to kind of pick out here. You can obviously very clearly see the 2019, the larger numbers during 2019, and then a drop off around 2021 and 2022 when there was a large amount of rainfall. So as we mentioned earlier, a key aspect with air quality is the meteorological conditions. Looking specifically at 2024 then, so generally there were a mixture of increases and decreases in the annual average PM10 concentrations compared between the 2 years. If we're focusing just on the Upper Hunter site, so that is the last 4 rows of the table, you can see that the 2024 annual average data is below 2023, and it's also below the all years average. If you want to, yeah, that's it. So this is essentially just taking the data and putting it into a graphical form. So again, the dotted line there, that is the all years average. The blue line is the Upper Hunter site, so all the sites, and the red line is the remainder of New South Wales. So if the lines are above the dotted line, that means it's above the all years average. So that's 2019, for example, due to the drought conditions. If it's below the line, it's below that all years average. And the key takeaway here really is that the lines are generally aligned. So if something is being experienced in the Upper Hunter, it is also being experienced across the remainder of New South Wales as a general trend. So similar again here for PM 2.5. So again, we're looking at the annual average, so the average for that entire year. And again, across the board, there's been a mixture of increases and decreases. Looking specifically at the Upper Hunter, we have at the large populations, it's increased from 2023. At the smaller communities, that number has decreased. They are all still below the all years average. And then similarly, as we showed for PM10, this is the variability and how aligned these two are. So again, showing an even stronger alignment than we saw for PM10. So yeah, well, again, what we're seeing in the Upper Hunter is generally being experienced across the remainder of New South Wales. Okay, so here is a comparison of trends really for the 4 station groupings. So yeah, the blue line is the larger population sites. Red is the smaller communities. Yellow is the diagnostic ones, so the ones near the mines, and the blue. The green is the background concentration. So again, what we're looking for here is are they following the same trend? And generally, yes, they are. If any site is showing a decrease, it's also reflected at the other 3 locations. If there's an increase, it's shown. So yeah, they're showing good alignment. So as we've mentioned before, meteorology plays a large part in air quality. So what we've done here is reviewed the meteorological and annual rainfall data. So this is collected from the Bureau of Meteorology, and compared this with the annual average PM10 concentrations. After this, we'll also look at how the annual Hunter Valley coal production compares with the annual average PM10 concentrations. So we'll look at the rainfall first. So this chart is showing you New South Wales rainfall in the red, and the blue is the Upper Hunter average PM10 concentrations, and this is doing as we would expect. So you get an increase in rainfall, and you get a reduction in the PM10 concentrations. Now we did take this a step further in the latest review, and we did a correlation coefficient, so just to understand the statistical significance, and what we received was a pretty high correlation, which again is kind of reflected in the data there. The next one is the Hunter Valley coal production versus the annual average PM10 concentrations. So the bar charts are showing the PM10 concentrations for each of the 4 station groupings that we've mentioned throughout this webinar, and the blue line is showing the total coal production year on year. Similarly to the meteorological data, we looked at whether there was any statistical significance through correlation, and we received a fairly low number, nowhere near the levels we had for meteorology. And again, what we're seeing here is a kind of a no fixed trend as such. And the key asset here really is that meteorological conditions are essentially driving PM10 concentrations, with rainfall being a natural dust suppressant, which will always reduce the PM10 concentrations. Okay, so yeah, so the feedback we got at the forum was to bring back the review of the number of exceedance days. So just to define what that means, an exceedance day is a 24-hour period that exceeds the New South Wales criteria. So for PM10, that is 50 micrograms per cubic meter. So we were looking at any day within the calendar year that exceeded 50. So we did that. We looked at those total exceedances across all the sites across the Upper Hunter and the rest of New South Wales, the same sites that we've been showing in the previous tables. And the aim here was really to understand the peaks in PM10, where these are located, and how often are they happening in comparison to previous years. So we have a similar table here that we've been showing before. So as we've said, 2019 was a particularly dry year, so we had a real high number of exceedances during 2019. 2024, in comparison to 2023, it is lower at pretty much all of them, except from the Southwest Slopes, which is just a location in New South Wales. So that proved to be kind of the exception to the rule for 2024. But at all these sites for 2024, they were lower than the all years average. Again, we did a comparison at the four groupings. So as you can see, there's general alignment at most of these years, with a couple of exceptions in there. Similarly, the next slide then does the same thing as we've done before, which is compare the remainder of New South Wales with the Upper Hunter, and again, there's a general alignment that if there's exceedances in the Hunter, these are also typically seen across the remainder of the New South Wales, which again goes back to those questions from that original 2020 project. Yeah, so just to wrap up the 2024 results then. So the 2024 results are consistent with 2023. The changes in PM10 concentrations that we're seeing within the Upper Hunter are generally consistent with changes that are being experienced across the rest of New South Wales, noting that there will always be some minor differences. The changes in these concentrations are associated with regional conditions, and are indicative of a minimal change in contribution from local emission sources, which includes mining. For rainfall, there continues to be a negative correlation, which we expected, and as we mentioned, that the correlation coefficient was particularly strong for that comparison. With coal production, these fluctuations are anticipated to be related more to meteorological conditions rather than a change in the coal production. So, as we've mentioned, the meteorology plays such a large part in air quality. I think that's everything from me. So hopefully that's given you. Oh no, there's one more. Okay, yeah, just for the exceedance days. So yeah, all locations recorded exceedance days below the all years average. Yeah, and generally the trends, everything was trending both with regards to the Upper Hunter stations, as well as when you compared the Upper Hunter with the remainder of New South Wales. I think that is the last slide. And yeah, hopefully that's given you a bit of a basis of air quality and monitoring, and a bit of a step back into why we've done the reviews, why they're sat where they are, and what we found this year. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Russ. That was very informative, and I found that particularly helpful because there are some very technical analyses included in that report. So I think that helps people just understand that. We have had a couple of questions come through, so we might jump to those. But if anyone has any other questions, please just drop them into the chat. Lisa, do you want to run through the questions that we've got?
Yep, absolutely. So the first one we've got, Russ, is where did you actually get the data from that was used in this analysis? Is it provided by mining companies?
Yep. So the air quality data is downloaded from the New South Wales EPA data download facility. So we're able to download all our data from there. So that's just raw kind of validated data. We then use that, and we do our analysis and prepare the figures that you've seen so far. In terms of rainfall data, so that comes straight from the Bureau of Meteorology. So we get annual rainfall data for New South Wales. So we're able to use that and do our own analysis from that. With regards to the coal production data, so that's come from the dialogue. It's come from dialogue for that, and again, that's the annual production values that we've then put in the charts.
Thanks, Russ. We've had another one come through and asking, is air quality regulated, and if so, by who?
Yep. So I suppose a couple of bits to this question. Generally, bigger picture, it's regulated by New South Wales EPA. Typically, if you're preparing an assessment, and this could be for a new facility, or it could be for a modification of a new facility, typically there will be a request for the proponent to prepare an air quality assessment. That will be conducted by an independent consultant, air quality expert. They will prepare an assessment. This will be submitted to the EPA or a local council. It can vary, and then the EPA will review and come back with any feedback, and then some requirements can typically end up in an EPO, an environmental protection license.
Right. We've had another one come through. Does the mining industry have a role in protecting air quality in the Upper Hunter?
Yeah. So again, you've got the EPLs in terms of each mine will have a commitment to reduce and lower its particulate matter dust emissions. So all of the mine sites will have a range of control factors or mitigation measures. So this would include things like a set speed limit. So the lower the speed, the less amount of dust that's generated through wheel generated dust and vehicle movements. Lowering of drop heights on things like loaders and dozers. Encouraged progressive rehabilitation, so that exposed areas don't remain exposed for too long for things like wind erosion. And then there's obviously water carts and so water sprays throughout the mine, and potentially even chemical dust suppressants if the mine decides to go there. But applying those control measures are intended to lower dust emissions as far as practicable. Yeah.
Right. These might relate to one of them that you answered before, Russ, but there's a question that's come in and asked, is the dialogue using other data sources than the EPA monitoring stations?
Okay. Yeah, say that again, sorry.
Is the dialogue using other data sources other than from the EPA monitoring stations?
I'm not sure on that one actually.
We
In
can,
term,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's just in terms of the data sources, it pretty much just as Russ outlined before. So it's the EPA's publicly available data set. Then there's the coal production data that we obtain through coal services, and then there's the rainfall data. But it's not, we're not using any other air quality monitoring site other than the EPA stations.
yeah, I suppose we're not using any individual kind of it's all the regulated stations in terms of air quality. Yeah.
Great. We've had another one come in. So you mentioned earlier in the presentation that monitoring stations are able to detect ozone. What generates ozone and what's the importance of it or significance of it?
Yeah, so ozone is kind of got two. You've got it. Depends where it is in the atmosphere. If it's higher up in the atmosphere, it's kind of a force for good. But if you get essentially tropospheric ozone, which is close to the ground, it can cause health effects. So it can have issues. Yeah, and it's linked with nitrogen dioxide in terms of how it forms, and can have health effects.
Yeah. Great, thanks for that. I had another one come in. Why are rolling averages used for the sites, given that the averages, are potentially skewed by the 2019 drought?
Yeah, it's a good question. It kind of has to be in there because it's the spread. You could, I suppose, argue that if you take out 2019, you could arguably take out 2021 and 2022, which is typically low. So these things tend to balance out. But it's in there so that we get a full spread. We get all years of data back from when monitoring began.
Yep, we've had another one come in. Was Stockton included in your comparison to other New South Wales stations?
Say that again, sorry.
Was Stockton included in your
Stockton?
comparison?
Stockton. Yep, Stockton will be within the it will be within the Newcastle ones. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Great. And then we've had one more come through. So the results show that rainfall is a dominant factor in air quality in the Upper Hunter. Is that a similar factor that's seen in other areas?
Yeah, it will be. It is a natural dust suppressant. So yeah, we see with the taking the 2021, 2022 La Nina, huge amounts of rainfall. We'll see the same patterns of improved air quality when there's high amounts of rainfall.
Great. That's all the questions that we've had come through at the moment. If there's anything else, please feel free to add them in the chat, and we can get back to you offline about that. But I'll pass over to James to wrap up.
Yeah, thanks very much. No, appreciate all those questions coming through. Thank you. And thanks very much to Russ for taking us through that presentation. Thanks to everyone for joining the webinar. As I mentioned, we will be uploading the recording and presentation onto the Dialogue website over the coming week or so. We'll send out an email when that is available. If you do have any questions or feedback, or if you'd like to recommend any topics for future webinars, please just reach out to either myself, Lisa, or Kate. We're certainly happy to have a discussion with you, and I hope you can join us for our next one. Thanks very much.